involved in. So first let me say, to preside over the Senate, you've been there for 32 years, you've been the rules chairman. If I didn't know the rules or the precedents and couldn't do that, I need to quit. And so that was very easy. But it was the second day after I took the oath of office. It was the beginning of the transformation for me, and an incredible experience. I asked Mr. Kester, he's right here, Tony, to come over to my office and tell me about the Office on Aging. I wanted to know what I was getting myself into. My Chief of Staff, Debbie Hammond, said, look, you got two options. Just finish the time and do whatever you want to do, or you can go and try to make a difference. And so what he told me about the struggling seniors across the state. He told me about a waiting list of 8,000 plus people in this state who would need essential services as seniors to remain independent and on their own, and we couldn't provide it. Then he told me about previous budgets that had been slashed over 48% over the previous 3 years, and that there was nobody cheerleading and bringing forward the effort to get them a better lot here in this state. When I found out those statistics, I learned about what was coming as some coined the Gray Tsunami, and it was headed our way. And it's almost a human calamity. We're at 912,000 plus seniors in South Carolina. We're scheduled over the next 15 years to almost double. The state, when I inherited the office, was without a strategic plan, and yet the baby boomers are coming, and the issue of aging is, I believe, the central public health issue of the decade. 1 in 11 seniors in this state are in risk of hunger. 1/3 of the seniors in this state live on Social Security alone. 51% of those aged 55 and older have less than $50,000 saved for retirement in this state. Over 80,000 seniors in South Carolina suffer with Alzheimer's or related disorder. There are too few senior centers to assist our aging population. Senior transportation is sadly lacking, and it's in decline in this state. Over 25% of those 85 or older require institutional care. 11.5% of seniors aged 60 or above live in poverty in South Carolina. And South Carolina has 1.3 million people set to retire soon. Across South Carolina, we find as we look, there were too few choices. People go without home care and without adult daycare. Services are disjointed, they're hard to access and to find. There's no one-stop place to go to get the information on how to initiate available services and choices in South Carolina. First of all, I can tell you we hope to change that in this state. With our Office on Aging and the new strategies that we're developing, we got to reevaluate how we can ensure the needs of South Carolina's elderly and vulnerable adults are met. For us, it is the mission ahead. Our first attempt at making a difference was trying to secure the funding. This was in my first year, first few months, to serve the estimated 8,000 people that I was told have been needs assessed and are sitting there on a waiting list, and we don't have the money. The paid lobbyists at the front door were more powerful than we were. We got some money in the Senate budget. It got knocked out in the Joint Conference Committee. And if we're going to change the big arc and the direction in this state, I got to get some grassroots support. So we decided to go to the Face of Aging tour, put a face and a story to the people across South Carolina, and begin moving this big arc and move us in a new direction. First question you probably ask is why programs through the Office on Aging are so important to this task, and this is the reason. We are not Medicaid at the Office on Aging. We, in fact, keep people off of Medicaid as part of our program. We're about keeping people independent and in their homes where they wish to stay across the state. So our office is a bridge for these senior folks across the state. We give them the opportunity to mature and age in place with grace and with dignity. Furthermore, adults with disability are able to stay with their families and live in comfortable surroundings. Secondly, our program is cost effective. We complement, we do not duplicate existing programs in a community. So we're able to efficiently use resources to maximize the available dollars. We're 40 times cheaper than if these individuals migrate to a Medicaid nursing bed. And for any one of you out there that thinks that Medicaid is just for the poor, you're mistaken. You or someone you know, or someone in your church or your family is just one big illness or one big accident away from journeying to the Medicaid bed. At $80,000 to $110,000 a year for a private pay skilled nursing facility, it's very easy to see how people will very quickly go through their home and their assets and find themselves in need of Medicaid. But if we have the opportunity through programs at $1,400 per person, $1,400 per person, to extend the helping hand, whether it's just a meal a day, or a visit to a supermarket, or to a doctor, or a pharmacy, to keep people out of those expensive Medicaid beds and in the home where they would prefer to do, you ought to be able to begin to see that we save the taxpayers quite a bit of money, because that Medicaid nursing bed will be $52,000 a year. In essence, a program that allows us to be proactive is almost 40 times cheaper than the alternative in the state. One way or another, we're going to pay for it. Society is. So why not be smart and do it on the front end and allow people to remain independent and in their home? Yet with all these challenges before us and what I just told you, this state continues to dump hundreds of millions more into the rigid, unchanging Medicaid system, which each year needs more and more money, while at the same time the state has cut its contributions by 48% for home and community-based programs, which slow down the migration by non-Medicaid seniors to the Medicaid beds. Funding home and community-based programs would have resulted in cost savings while giving seniors what they want in the state: the ability to stay home and to independently age in place. If the estimated 22,000 seniors we currently serve lost services, most would be forced to utilize Medicaid-funded nursing homes, which have a 2-year waiting list. What happens to them in the meantime? At an increased cost from the current $26 million to almost $1.5 billion. This is the message I hope to convey to legislators in Columbia through the Face of Aging tour. I want to put a story and a human face to the challenge that's coming our way to convince the policymakers in this state. I want them to realize what's at stake and to have a clear picture of the challenge that we're facing. Let me tell you about some of the people I met, because it puts in perspective the story. In a small rural community, got an 84-year-old grandfather. He's got a heart condition. He's caring for a 10-year-old grandson. His son dropped dead with a heart attack. He's out on a walker mowing the lawn trying to make it. The meals that we deliver every day, because he can't physically cook, keep that family together, keeps that young grandson home with his grandfather, and gives them an opportunity. A photographer that was with us from the local newspaper was so moved by what he saw that day in that home visit. He told me, he said, "I'll have one of our young fellows from the church down here Saturday. We'll get this lawn. That gentleman doesn't need to be out there." Then let me take you to another one I encountered. This was an incredible experience. She hadn't been on our meals program but about 2 months. She's got acute diabetes. She's lost her legs from well above her knees down. She's sitting in the bed. I asked her, I said, "What does it mean we've been able to get you on the meals program?" And she said, "In 2 months, I've gotten the physical strength to pull myself across that bed and get back in that wheelchair and live again." And if that isn't enough, let me take you now. I delivered meals in an apartment complex for seniors. And I'm back at the elevator, and a gentleman in a wheelchair grabbed me by the arm and he said, "Governor, I want to thank you for what y'all do for me." And I said, "Well, help me understand what we're doing for you." And he said, "Look, I have to catch the bus that y'all send at 4 a.m. in the morning." He said, "I need to hook up to a dialysis machine 3 times a week. And y'all get me to a place where I can hook up to that lifeline." But he said, "I want to tell you what I do because of that. I turn around and I call every senior I know that's supposed to be on that bus to make sure they get on that bus and are with me and are at the dialysis clinic and have a chance to remain healthy and to remain home." And he said, "I'm able to still to live here." And then let me take you lastly, next to last, over to the PD. Those of you who may see read Great Expectations, and I'm not talking about personality disorders and Miss Havisham and everything, but I'm talking about her and the way she dressed and her fastidious ways. This particular place we went to, I went up the driveway, and there on the carport sits this old white Oldsmobile. The tires have rotted off where 11 years ago this retired county hospital nurse parked the car and she no longer can drive. She remains home. She's got a 17-year-old cat. We knock on the door. The only person that ever sees her contact the outside world is that senior volunteer that goes there every day with that meal and checks on her to make sure that she's okay. She's tried to fix herself up and to present herself as bright, prosperous, prim, and proper. You can tell it's from the past. But the gray veil's there. It's dusty. It's dingy. The house, I can look in and tell. And then she starts to tell me about Thanksgiving, and she's hoping she's going to have some visitors and family for Thanksgiving. Nobody's coming. Nobody's been there except the volunteer. But she would rather stay at home. I deliver in the meal, and that senior volunteer every day pulls that mailbox open, and she knows not to come out on her walker to get her mail until she sees the postal box back up. It's one of those great stories. She easily could slide into a nursing home. She doesn't want to go there. She's happy. Lastly, the other one I want to tell you about is the 80-year-old Korean veteran, war veteran, because you will get a chance to meet her on video. She'll speak to you. She should put into perspective for everybody how fragile this existence is. She looked at me and she said, look, I thought I had enough money saved. I thought I had it all figured out. She was also a retired nurse. She said, I thought I could get there. But in 1997, I had a stroke. And everything changed. I became blind overnight. I quickly went through my assets. I got exploited by some folks who came supposedly to caregive, and he took my money. And she says, she has two little pets, two little Jack and Jill, two little Chihuahuas. One of the things we do for her, she can't drive, go anywhere. She's blind. But we've learned through our experience that if we deliver meals and they have pets and they have no way to go get pet food, they will starve themselves to feed that pet. So that's one of the things we do for her. But she's able to stay in that home. So for every face I just described for you, and I could take you through more stories that are tear-jerkers. There are hundreds of them, and then thousands of them out there across the state who need these services, who are on our waiting list. They could be your fellow church members, they could be members of your family, it could be your mothers, your fathers, any of them. One day it could be any one of you in this room that it can happen to. Current needs of these thousands of people cannot be met because our budget has been cut by 48%. The two questions in your mind should be, first of all, how did you not know that after having served 32 years in the Senate that was going on? First of all, let me tell you that it's no easy solution in Columbia. It's an 800-page budget. The Office on Aging is nothing more than a line item, and unless you're adding to it or subtracting, which you never did on the floor, it never gets discussed, it never gets debated, people don't even know that it's there. I was there and I can tell you that, and I was active on the budget. There's no in-depth look at it. Secondly, it's the political environment in South Carolina and in this country today. It's always about winning the next election. It's never about solving the next problem. The Gray Tsunami is not what you call a politically exciting issue in this state, but it should be a humanitarian issue. It's a real challenge coming at us, and it's one that if it's not dealt with will have severe human consequences as well as budget-busting results. Yet it's not the one that gathers the headlines. It's not the one that's at the top of the legislative agendas of either political party. It's not at the top of what the legislative leaders had for this year in Columbia. So to make this change, I need the help and ideas from folks like y'all and organizations, councils on aging, and all of the different volunteer groups. If we're to make a difference, I tell service clubs and faith-based and others, adopt a senior center, adopt a senior. Talk to your elected officials. Tell them to support our efforts to control and to slow down this migration of seniors to the nursing beds so we can minimize the future budget busters that are coming. And above all, I want to encourage everyone to extend a human hand to seniors. What I've seen across the state, seniors, first of all, they've paid their taxes, they've worked all their life, they've paid their dues. And here they are, they haven't worked, they're not looking for handouts, but through no fault of their own, because of time, because of an event, the veil of age has made it where they no longer can help themselves. And they just need something, they just need that helping hand. They have the will and determination to make it. It's just those little things that make a difference. And so, look, I'm charged by law for speaking out as an advocate for seniors and folks with disabilities. And that's what I'm going to do. And the homes across the state, they're struggling, and they're doing it day by day. They can't come to the State House. They can't appear before those front doors like those paid lobbies to get the funds that are up there. So the solutions for seniors they won't come only with what I call funding cost-saving measures, but they also will come with tackling our regulatory environment. What many people don't realize is that fees and laws are being created in this state and being passed on to the public through regulations promulgated by the regulators without a single vote of this General Assembly. In fact, one of the last bills that I supported as Senator before I had to go to Lieutenant Governor was to require that every single regulation in this state be voted up or down by the General Assembly, not let it go into effect 120 days after they file. Now let me tell you why. Because in this Face of Aging tour, I've seen two things. I've seen under-regulation and over-regulation. We had a facility we had to move people out of in the middle of the night. You know why? They licensed them, they didn't have a kitchen, and they didn't have a refrigerator. They were bringing in ice coolers and going to a fast food and getting fast food and putting it in the ice coolers and feeding the residents there. How in the world did they get licensed in this state? Then I take you to another facility. It handles what we call OSS folks. These are people on supplemental security income. A lot of them have cognitive challenges. Some of them, they used to be in the mental health system before it got dismantled. This is the only place they know is home. Without these OSS facilities, they're going to be out on the street. And they're going to be a problem because they will quickly end up in the emergency rooms. From the emergency rooms, they're going to end up in the Medicaid beds, and we go pay 3 times the cost. Let them remain happy in the OSS. This OSS facility had a wheelchair ramp. Got a few weak boards on it. We got a church, donated the manpower, a building supply to give them the wood. In comes the DHEC regulators. You can't fix it under our regulations. Either leave it like it is or tear it down or we'll shut you down. People-centered is what regulation should be about, not pleasing the heart of a regulator. And if that isn't enough, let me take you very quickly to Senior Center. The ladies in that Senior Center produce beautiful crafts. And then they sell them, and they put them out, and they raise money for things for seniors. In comes the fire marshal. We just helped them with bingo money, expand the facility. Every square foot's precious space for those seniors. Got a closet, everything in it is non-combustible. Even got a sprinkler in it, but in comes the fire marshal and says, you can't put the crafts in those shelves because there's a pump in there. Let's go burn in the pump and in the closet. But no, they can't use it. And then let me take you to another one. This residential care facility, we know who gives good service because our ombudsman pick up the complaints. DHEC regulators crawl through there, I'm telling you, as busy as almost as ants. And they could find nothing wrong with the staffing, the cleanliness, or anything else. You know what they cited them for and wrote them up for? One of the ladies in one of the private apartments had a can of hairspray, and they said the hairspray under their regulations is a toxic substance. You want to get a bunch of residents angry, take the lady's hairspray. And then if that isn't enough, I want to take you to the skilled nursing center. Here, the gentleman told me, he said, these workers work we get so much only for reimbursement, and we would rather give them the bonus. But in stepped the DHEC regulators and said, you got a back door? And he said, nobody comes out of here. Nobody's mobile in this facility. They're bedridden. Nobody comes out. We don't care. Our regulations say you got to have a sidewalk. If you have a back door, you got to have a sidewalk for the residents down the side and around the back. So they get thousands of dollars to do that instead of improving the interior. Then the other side of DHEC comes in and says, if you're going to have a sidewalk, now we're going to impose the federal regs on you, and you got to have not a single lighting system, but a dual lighting system. So all of this money spent has no benefit to the people, drives the cost up, and again, it's one of those things where it's not people-centered. And if I haven't convinced you yet, I'm going to take you to state-of-the-art. It's a beautiful facility like this. It was built onto it. Has a skilled nursing center on one end. It's assisted living all around the community. They build a health center, so they connect it to the skilled nursing center so the folks in there who have mobility problems can utilize it. Has a big swimming pool with glass and beam walls. In come the DHEC regulators. You've made a mistake. When you connected it to the skilled nursing center roof, the walls over the pool have got, I believe, have 4 hours of fireproofing. And since they don't, the only thing in there that can burn are the beach towels and the diving pool. So now the seniors can't use that pool, but you can put them on a bus under their regs and take them to a wooden building, and it's not connected to it, and they can get in the swimming pool. And then lastly, the Alzheimer's unit. This one you just will not believe. A year and a half previous, they finished the construction, they had it all done, everything ready, they approved the locking system. The locking system were electric locks. You have to push on and hold them for 5 seconds, and the door will unlock. Other than that, the folks in there can't get out. They approved it, they installed it. A year and a half later, another regulator comes in and says, that is in violation of our regulation, unless you put a sign up there telling them how to get out. So they had to put a sign up telling the Alzheimer's unit residents how to get out of the Alzheimer's unit, and one of the doors opens up to a sidewalk in the street. And then when we went out to the courtyard, he wanted, the operator of this facility said, please let me just show you the rest of this. So he took me out into a courtyard, and the regulator out there said, you can't have that electric lock, which by the way, unlocks if you have a fire. You can't have that there. And he said, well, what have I got to have? He said, you got to have a breakaway padlock. And he said, well, how do they get out? And he said, well, put a hammer there for them to hit it. If you ever, I mean, I'm telling you true stories across the state. So you can clearly see the common sense is lacking in our regulatory process. We need to sunset all regulations over time. We need to make sure that business, stakeholders, representatives from the senior citizen community are there at the time that regulations are promulgated. And then we need to have a vote, up or down, yes or no, on regulations so that we can make sure that they're person-centered. It's about helping people. That's what it's about. Einstein made it very clear what he said, and he just hit the nail on the head. To keep doing the same thing and expect a different result is insanity. But look what we're doing here in this state. We continue to debate the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act when the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled on it, and it's the law of the land. Look, I wasn't a supporter of it, but it's the law of the land. So, we know that the Medicaid system is unsustainable as currently structured, and it will not last. In its current form, it's the big elephant in the room. But all the while the problems pile up, and we know we can't afford it on the long term, we go forward with politics as usual. The seniors go double. We fail to embrace new policies. We cannot continue to stay the course. It does not allow us the flexibility to utilize the money where it would do the most good. What do I mean by that? Take some Medicaid money and use it to keep people off of Medicaid so that you use healthy practices like using the money for prevention so that you don't migrate to the acute care levels. But we do not. Instead, we got arguments going on. Do we take money from this pot or that pot or not from this pot? South Carolina needs a different approach. We need to be in Washington. The discussion in Washington needs to be, give us flexibility. Give us the ability to put the money where it serves people. But instead, it's not being handled, in my opinion, as a business decision. If you don't invest the time to fully understand the system from top to bottom and the consequences of what you're doing, the avalanche of costs in this state will quickly consume us. There is a way to fix the system, but simply blindly throwing money at it without first looking at options or continuing to argue about questions that have already been resolved is not only irresponsible, but it's going to delay the long-term remedy. I say let's use our energy to look at meaningful reforms and adopt changes based on facts and what we can do, not waste more time debating what we can't do. We need to identify more resources for a growing senior population. I will once again, and I have, asked the General Assembly for $5 million more to close the gap on that 8,000 on that waiting list and to keep the pressure off of the Medicaid beds. It'll be a cost saver. I've also asked for the $3 million for respite caregivers. And let me say, respite care is an essential element. You have families all across South Carolina. You have spouses taking care of spouses, taking care of adult children with disabilities. These is over 777,000 of them across the state. And if they don't get breaks and refresh, they will burn out. And they will end up in these Medicaid beds and in our hospitals and other things. Let me wrap up by saying it's true that the Medicaid money in this state, a lot of it goes for the aging and disabled. But what a lot of people need to realize is that these people are living at the poverty level or below. But how many million more of the retirees headed our way will someday not be able to support themselves and soon qualify for Medicaid? Those are the people we need to ensure have the less expensive resources and more choices and services available in communities that will keep them away from Medicaid nursing beds. The bottom line is, if we're going to prevent the middle class from becoming Medicaid dependent, wiping out their assets, and being able to live independently, that's what's going to occur if we don't get smart, in my opinion, and begin creating choices and alternatives across South Carolina. Again, if you don't take anything away from my speech today, it is that our Office on Aging is not Medicaid. We keep people off of Medicaid. Look, it's not a political issue. It shouldn't be a Democrat, Republican issue at all. It's a people's issue. It's a humanitarian issue. We need to care for our growing senior and vulnerable adult population. It's as simple as that. We don't need to leave people behind in this state. We got to be prepared for the great tsunami. We need a regulatory reform. We got to strengthen home and community base. We got to end these waiting lists for these suffering seniors who are struggling. We got to slow down the migration to the nursing beds. What we're hoping to do is to weave a fabric of faith-based, nonprofits, for-profits, and government agencies into a complementary, what I call public-private partnership, which allows us to take needs assessment and figure out how to be the best stewards of those resources and give people the information and services as needed to access and to stay independent and in their homes. I tell audiences, seniors in this state are not looking for handouts. They're looking for a helping hand to make it, to remain independent, the American dream, and to remain as self-sufficient as possible. So Winston Churchill had it right when he talked about life. And he said, you make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give. If we give it our best effort, we can make a good life for all of those who are coming in this way. Together, I hope we'll reach to make the future in this state yet those golden years for those people as they move through. I want to say that in closing, I want to share with you a brief video which summarizes some of my findings. I've showed this to the legislature. I've always said if I can't get in here, I'm going to get in there with this message. And what you're about to see is some of the challenges and the shortcomings that we've got. Our goal is to build a one-stop shop. And I want to stop and tell you, when I became head of this, Kester can tell you, I told our folks we got to change from top to bottom, and we're changing. The first thing we did, we began developing a strategic plan. We looked at our strengths, we looked at our weaknesses, we looked at what we call outside threats, obstacles that will keep us from getting to where we need to be. And then out of that, we were forced by this facilitator crystallize it down into 7 goals in this state. Then what we did is we developed the strategies to get to those goals. Now we're going back and